Okay, Art 1-2, welcome to part 2 of Finish the Final Draft. So we are going to value map the glass. We're going to erase the grid so that we are all ready to shade tomorrow. We're going to start shading in the glass. And then we'll kind of do a double take. We'll make sure, we have, all the details we need in every item, although we don't need, an intense amount of detail. We'll clean up some lines, etc. Okay, so you need obviously your image. I am going to still use the viewfinder because there are some definite shapes in the glass that we need. And then other areas we're just kind of giving us a suggestion of a shape of value. Okay, something to go under my hand. I still feel like this handle looks a little funky. So I'm going to bring it up slightly so that the curve is all complete. Maybe down here it needs to come in a little. Okay, I'm going to start fairly easy. So looking on the left side of the glass, I look at the very edge and how there's like a light kind of, it's actually reflected light on the edge. And we're not going to draw every single detail, but we're going to map out the most of it. So I'm going to put a little L in there for light. Okay, so then above that is a darker streak that kind of starts below the grid. And we can definitely use our viewfinder. So it goes to about halfway into the box. So I do still have my halfway mark. Maybe a little bit lower. And then I'm looking at where does this dark curve line up with. It lines up with like this part of the handle. So I'll give myself a little line like, hey, that dark value should come all the way here. Kind of curves up a little bit. So I'm gonna put a D in there for dark. Ooh, I forgot. Let's go back and draw the cloth that we can see. And we're looking for the distortion or the warpedness that the glass creates with the cloth. And then that's all. Okay. All right, so then we're going to draw what we can see in the cloth part. So I am going to give myself like where you can see the rounded part in the inside and it meets between the flower and the piece of wood. And I'm going to give myself that darker area above the cloth. So I'm going to say medium. I'm going to put an M in those. And then keeping in mind that then that part in the middle is light. Okay, so we do have a cast shadow showing through the glass. So we have like a curvature here. And then on the other side, that little part that we can see between the pieces of wood, there's like a highlight showing in there. And so I'm going to label that L. So I know like, hey, that's light. It's not white, but it's very, very light. And then we'll just know wherever the white cloth is, it's just a light value. Okay, so some of these like fuzzy kind of nondescript shapes, we're going to just turn them into a shape. So as you learned with the cup, you want to keep the shapes and then you'll kind of make it look fuzzy in the end. So I'm looking at like this bigger piece here. It kind of angles down and meets the piece of wood. There's a lighter part inside. So I'm going to say M for that and then an L in the inside. Okay, so then this like curved and it kind of meets, I'm going to be careful because it kind of meets in with all those highlights. But I definitely want like a little bit of a shape of that. And there's a little bit darker area above the cloth. Inside that is some lighter kind of value. So I'm going to put M. Okay, let's see, on the far right hand side, right above where that piece of wood is, we have like a darker streak along the edge. So I'm going to put a D in that. All right, so now we're into the highlights. So we definitely want to be as precise as we can with the highlights because we're going to have to go around them the whole time. Okay, so this little piece of highlight that is in F5, so I'm making sure I'm in F5. Okay, little piece of highlight right here. And that falls on the grid line. And if you need to use your viewfinder, use your viewfinder. So I'm going to put W inside that. Very lightly, because you know you're going to erase it. Okay, so I'll put W in that piece. Okay, so then all these little wavy curved, we just want to make sure they stay curved. So I am going to turn them into little rectangles. So we have like one here, one below, and then there's two next to it. And then there's like another rectangle, and then like a wavy piece. So I'm drawing the guideline first, and I'm going to go back and turn it into a shape. Okay, and then we have like a little, so the tiny, tiny little pieces, we'll probably just erase that out as we go, but if we can go around a shape, that makes it a lot easier. And you can always make the shape smaller. So when I'm drawing the shapes, I try to make them slightly bigger because I know I'm going to have to go around them. And then, you know, with your pencil, you can just kind of close in and make it smaller. So again, I'm going like a little bit bigger. So I have to go around all of these, which is kind of annoying, but it looks amazing when we're done. So I'm just going to put W so I know like, hey, all those little shapes are white. Okay, so this one over here where there's like these two little pieces, that's in box 4E. I'm gonna just, there's a little line in between on the right. We can just add that line later. Okay, so now the streaks. So one is in column D, starting in 3, all the way up to like almost the middle of D2. Almost on that line. Okay, the one next to it. And it goes up a little higher. And it's a little thicker at the bottom. Okay, so we have another piece above that one. We have a highlight on the mouth or the rim of the jug. I'm going to add that slighter, lighter highlight. It's like not as bright, but there is a piece above that first little streak that we drew. Okay, then in the top of the mouth. Okay, so then there's some, then we're going to look at the, just double checking. The little tiny dark values in the mouth, we're just going to look at that in shade. We don't really need to value map that. Okay, so I have highlights along the handle that are definitely curved. And then I am just going to put in that darker line that's like right next to it just to tell myself like, hey, this is darker here. Okay, then where the thickness of the glass meets, or the fusing of the handle, I'm just going to give myself that line. So I know I'm putting value along that line and it's a little darker on that side. And there's actually a shape like there. So I'm just going to put D next to that. Okay, we value mapped our glass. And so everything else in here is like a medium light. We're just going to look at it. Okay, so we value mapped our glass. Now we're going to erase the whole entire grid. So I actually recommend you use that little pencil eraser that was in your set. You're going to try not to touch your paper. And you don't have to erase the border. We're actually not going to put anything in the border. And so you're going to actually erase, and your guidelines you're going to erase, so you're cleaning it all up. So if my sleeve is on top of my paper, I would definitely put something under your hand because you don't want your sleeve smudging that. Okay, so that's easy. Then when you get into like, do I have to erase it everywhere? Yes, you do. So I'm going to be a little careful. I mean, the wood isn't that important. I mean, it's fairly dark, but yes, you're definitely going to have to get in there and be careful with your erasing. But if you kind of draw sketchy, like for me, this line of the petal is really sketchy. So while I'm cleaning it up, I'm also going to clean up my lines to make sure it's just one line that I'm following. So you're going to clean everything up, and in the larger areas you can use your bigger pink eraser, but obviously in smaller areas you would use this eraser. And if you need to take it off to use that eraser, go ahead. But I try to save this one for erasing out detail, which is why you got this one for erasing out grids. And kind of, you know, use this eraser instead of something else. Okay, so I will actually, I'm not going to take a picture because you're going to see this in the next video. So I'm going to erase my grid everywhere and I'll show it to you in the next video. Tomorrow, we're going to shade the glass. And so for every day you have an item, except for shell and apple are going to be the same day because those are both very, very easy. So there's a demonstration for every single item that will happen next week. You just watch the video, shade that item, and that's it. That's all you need to accomplish. Unless you're running behind, then you need to catch up. For the background, you guys are going to have some different options that we can kind of personalize it a little bit more. But for most of us, you know, obviously this is going to look very similar for many of us. So make sure you do a really good job. And then sometimes instead of like touching it with my hand to sweep the eraser stuff, I will actually use a tissue to like kind of sweep it off so that you're not using like the oils from your hand aren't getting on your paper. And then at home, then I take my tissue and I sweep all those eraser things into my hand and throw them away. So don't sweep it onto your floor at your house. Okay, erase your grid and you'll see what that looks like in the next video. And then we're gonna shade the glass. All right. Oh, actually, you need to take a picture of this. And then you're going to submit in Google Doc 15. And it's fine. If you think you had trouble with something, leave the grid on there. If you feel really confident that yours looks very similar to mine, then you can erase your grid. But if you need help, then keep the grid. All right, good luck.